Witch in Charm's Way, a cozy mystery audiobook, written and narrated by R.K. Dreaming. Part 25. I shook my head regretfully. I had promised to help set Lily's murdered spirit to rest, and I still hadn't done anything about it. I said quickly, "Sorry, Aunt Adele, not yet, but we're going to the club tonight to investigate. Allegra and Jasper know all about it." Her expression cleared. "Oh, that's wonderful." Then she frowned disapprovingly. "Although I do think Allegra might have thought better than wearing a red dress on your date." I laughed. "I think she looks gorgeous, and really, Aunt Adele, I'm not in the headspace to even think about her dating. And maybe Allegra is hoping to see her mystery man tonight. I might even find out who he is." I was excited at this thought. "Good for her," said Aunt Adele. "But don't let that Jasper slide through your fingers. He seems such a lovely young chap. You have to seize the moment while the feelings are hot, you know. You can't let things fizzle out." "There is nothing sizzling in the first place," I told her. "We'll see about that," she said with a small smile, and added, "You three be careful tonight. We want to set that poor girl's spirit to rest, but I couldn't bear if anyone else was hurt." "Don't worry. I'm a very cautious sort," I promised her. Club Nocturne was opposite Brimstone Bay Beach, on a street which we locals called the Strip. In the daytime, the Strip was a bustling tourist haven, full of souvenir shops and cafes and restaurants. In the nighttime, it was a hot spot for nightlife, with all the clubs and pubs open until the early hours. The doorman took one look at Allegra, looking ravishing in red, and grinned. His fangs gleamed in the streetlights. It was a bit rude for him to have them out on display like that, but I guess it added to the excitement for the tourists. It also let the locals know that the security in Club Nocturne was not to be messed around with. "Ladies," the doorman said, tipping his hat at both of us. "Gent," said Allegra, tipping a non-existent hat back at him. Inside, the club was packed to the seams. It had been many years since I had been in a nightclub, and I had forgotten how it felt to be thrust into a sea of bouncing, writhing bodies. The music was pulsing so loudly from the speakers that I could feel the vibrations running through my entire body. Strobe lights flashed above, catching the odd, ecstatic face here and there. It was heady and a bit daunting. But hey, I was here on a mission, not for fun. I didn't have to worry about getting bored and being the dull one who wanted to go home when everyone else wanted to party. Tonight, it wouldn't matter if I ended up feeling out of place amongst all of this revelry. Jasper, however, seemed to have forgotten the mission. He put one arm around me and one arm around Allegra and started leading us towards the bar. "But don't we want to—" My voice trailed off. There was no way I was going to be heard in this din anyway. Jasper leaned close to me to shout in my ear, "Let's have a couple of drinks first. We don't want to frighten people off by questioning them as if we were the police." He had a point. He ordered a mojito for me, a prosecco for Allegra, and something in a crystal cup that was letting off strange rainbow-coloured smoke for himself. Oh, what cutely ominous rainbows. They made me laugh. "Want to try it?" he shouted in my ear. I shook my head. Allegra nodded, took a sip, and then let out a whoop. "Whoa, that's good." He grinned at her approvingly. "You should try some," Allegra shouted in my ear. I shook my head again. She said something. By the movement of her lips, I was sure it was spoil sport. She leaned in close to me to say, You need something a little bit more than that, and she pointed her wand at my drink. She raised an eyebrow inquiringly. I shrugged and lifted my glass closer. Whatever incantation she said was lost in the din. When I took a tentative sip of my mojito, it tasted exactly like I wanted it to taste, tangy and minty and delicious. But by the time I was done drinking it, I felt as light as air, as if I had inhaled dozens of bubblicious bubbles, and all that happiness was merrily jostling around inside of me. Allegra always had been wonderful at putting fluffiness into anything, even my mojito. When Jasper dragged us both onto the dance floor, I laughed and happily went. Pretty soon I was having the time of my life. Jasper was a good dancer, and he paid equal attention to me and Allegra. The music was incredible all of a sudden, no longer the din that I had originally thought it was. I was having more fun than I had had in years. Allegra grinned at me knowingly. I grinned back. I could feel the rhythm thumping in my blood and in my heart and in my head, and I loved it. I loved the way Jasper was swirling me around. I loved the three of us dancing in a circle, our arms around each other. This felt like the happiness that had been lacking in my life for so long. I finally felt like I had come home. I wasn't even startled when someone threw their arm around my shoulders from behind. I turned to see Oberon Malte Jr. laughing at me. "Someone's having fun," he shouted in my ear. I nodded enthusiastically. He laughed and grabbed my arm and twirled me around. "Hey, don't steal my date," shouted Jasper. Oberon only shrugged and started dancing with me. He was a good dancer, very confident and fun. He hammed it up for me, exaggerating his shoulder shimmies and making me laugh. Lorcan, Paolo, and Petra were with him. When the song ended, Oberon and I returned to our little group. A waiter was standing next to Petra with a tray of drinks. This made me laugh even harder. Trust Oberon to have a waiter following him around in his father's club. Lorcan picked a drink from the tray and gave it to Allegra, but Petra took it from him and gave it to me. "You look like you could do with it," she said, grinning. She was right. I was out of breath and parched from all of the dancing. I took a sip and it was good. Some sort of fruity tropical cocktail with pineapple and coconut in it, two of my favourite flavours. It was too loud to talk in the club, so we danced instead. The only times before that I had been in a club like this in my adult life had been with Drew and his friends, and it had never felt as fun and relaxed as this. I had always felt awkward, especially with the dancing. But whatever happiness that Allegra had put in my drink tonight made my feet feel light and free. I didn't feel self-conscious at all. I vaguely wondered how we were going to sneak away from Oberon and his group to find the outdoor construction area that they had told us about. I wanted to take a look around it, and I intended to ask whatever security guard was standing at that exit a few questions about the night of the murder. The problem was that I was in such a good mood and having so much fun that it seemed a shame to ruin it. And I knew that Jasper and Allegra were having the time of their lives too. I didn't want to spoil it for them, so I just went with the flow. Within half an hour, however, my mood had changed. I felt sick. My stomach was roiling, and I had an immense urge to throw up. I felt suffocated, and I wanted to go home. It was that drink, I thought. The drink that Lorcan had been handing to Allegra, and which Petra had given to me instead. The smarmy git, what had he put in it? It looked like I was the only one feeling sick, though, because Allegra and Oberon were dancing now, and she looked as happy as anything. So maybe it was just me. Maybe it was all too much excitement for me. Something felt off. Gosh, this murder had made me paranoid. Jasper noticed the look on my face and put his arm around me. "What is it?" he said, his breath warm against my ear. I shook my head, feeling horribly sick, and looked around desperately for an exit. "I just need some air," I said to him. He nodded, leading me back the way we had come towards the front exit. But I shook my head. Across the dance floor, I had spotted something that should have made me feel incredulous, but which I was getting used to by now. A black cat was arrogantly prowling through the dance floor as if he belonged there, hissing at anyone whose feet threatened to trample him, and frightening some big burly guys out of his way. It was Captain Villain. He looked over his shoulder right at me, the strobe lighting catching his green eyes and making them dazzle. "Are you coming?" he said. "You'll want to see this." "Look there," I said to Jasper, pointing towards the fire exit that Captain Villain was headed towards. When we followed him through it, we found ourselves in a dimly lit corridor. We were at the back of the club, somewhere where customers probably were not allowed to go. Captain Villain was up ahead, and he seemed to know exactly where he was going. And maybe he did. Kitten Cove wasn't all that far from here. The cats from there roamed the town at free will, enjoying treats from the more generous residents. I got the feeling that this was not Captain Villain's first time in this club. He led us down the corridor and turned into another one. We went past many closed doors, but nobody stopped us. It was quiet here, and nobody else was around. Finally, we went all the way up a set of spiral staircases and arrived at a door at the very top. Captain Villain stopped outside it. Clearly, he wanted us to go through. Excited, I turned the handle and was glad to find it wasn't locked, which wasn't surprising, seeing as the club staff probably didn't expect anyone to come up here. "Hey, what are you guys doing?" said a voice behind us. Allegra had followed us. "Investigating," I said, and pushed the mystery door open. "Hi, you've reached the end. Comment the code word abracadabra to confuse everyone who hasn't reached this part of the story yet. Thanks for playing along."